Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Imagebuildrs Present Conversations with Michael Carson. I'm your host, Michael Carson. Thank you for joining our Facebook Live weekly broadcast for Men by Men. Make sure you follow us on Facebook. That's Imagebuildrs, Imagebuildrs, and also follow me personally at Michael Carson. You can also check me out on Instagram at Michael Carson Jr. We typically try to post some of the same stuff on Instagram, but not as much as we do on Facebook. Also, after this show tonight, be sure to check into Instagram, again, Michael Carson Jr., so that we'll have what's called the after show, and we'll not so much dig in too much into what we talked about tonight, but just kind of give an overview of what we share tonight on this broadcast. For those of you that are watching and you like what you've seen thus far, this is our third broadcast. We're getting better and better and better, and hopefully we'll continue to provide the quality broadcast that you guys will want to see each week, and the content that'll matter to you most. But if you like what you see and you want to sponsor, help us to get better, help us to advertise what we're doing, feel free to reach me at info at Imagebuildrs, Imagebuildrs.com. You can send me an email there to let me know, hey, would like to sponsor you. We'll talk about what that looks like and how you're able to do that. I'm excited about tonight's show. I have a good friend of mine, as well as someone who's accomplished and I'll let him kind of give his background. But David Daniels is with me tonight. We're gonna touch on the subject of workplace. Is it a battle space or is it a safe space? I really want to get into this because a lot of people are working from home now. Some people are still working in the office. We have a lot of essential workers who are out there having to go to work, provide the services that we look for and we need in grocery stores and fire departments and police officers and our frontline workers, our healthcare workers. We want to salute them tonight and let our first responders and our frontline workers know that we're praying for them. We appreciate the work that they're doing because without them, we couldn't be safe and receive the resources we need during this pandemic. So I'm excited tonight to have, I don't know if he's ever retired, because every time I talk to him, he's always doing something in public safety. He's a former fire chief, first responder. We gave him the keys to the city, the keys to the state. He's received a lot of stuff. I want to welcome tonight my friend David Daniels. Thank you so much for being here, Dave. Appreciate you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So I just want you to take the opportunity to tell people a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your background. We'll dig into it a little bit deeper, and then also about your organization, ID2 Solutions, and some of the things that you guys provide and offer.
Well, because I like to spend a lot of the time talking about the topic, just very briefly, I'm a native of Seattle, Washington, who stumbled into the fire service a number of years ago. As a matter of fact, I got the call the day after my 21st birthday, and it changed my life, and it changed the life of virtually everybody who's connected to me, because that led to a 20-year career in the Seattle Fire Department. I left there as an assistant fire chief and got my first fire chief's job here in Fulton County. And it was interesting, actually. So when I was, fairly young at the time for fire chief types, because generally people don't even make battalion chief until their 50s. I was 40 at the time. And so I decided that I wanted to be a fire chief in a city with at least, or in a jurisdiction, I should say, with at least 200,000 population and 20% Black population. That was it. If it didn't have that, I didn't apply for it. I ended up on the short list of 3 places: Nashville, Tennessee, Norfolk, Virginia, and Fulton County. And Fulton County called first. That's really it. It was not. And when I moved here, actually, I was telling someone that they actually took a cut and pay to move here because I wanted to do the job. So it wasn't really about the money. I wanted to do the job. Never done the job before, because in Seattle I was always too young, and they never let me act as a fire chief there because I was always too young. And there are those who believe that there is somehow a connection between tenure and competence and age and competence. And I just don't necessarily buy it. But anyway,
race and competence?
Say again?
What about race and competence?
That's a whole nother conversation.
Okay.
That's a whole nother, let's, just, so competence is the combination of knowledge, skill, and then the ability to apply that skill. So you have to know what to do, have to have the skills to be able to do it. Then you have the ability to combine those into something that can accomplish the work that needs to be done. And I find that you'll get people with one of them. You get some people who are very knowledgeable, but they just can't apply any of it to anything. Or they've got they got hands-on skills, but they don't even really know. It's just kind of natural to them. If you tell them to explain it, they really can't. And then you have some who have just kind of this innate kind of mix of abilities, but it kind of comes and goes. The challenge is, can you get people who can do all of those all the time, or at least all of those for the work you're expecting them to do at the time, and not assume that they're great at everything, because none of us is. So anyway, I did fire service stuff for a number of years, was involved in a lot of groups. I left my last fire service assignment as a fire chief anyway, was one of the reasons why I now focus a lot on bullying and harassment and workplace violence prevention, because they treated me like trash. So I was the only Black person working there, and I think I may have been the only Black person I'd ever seen. But I was after I left Fulton County, went to a couple other places, and that, now I don't even mention their names because of how they treated me there. And it convinced me that I really wanted to, and there was definitely race involved in that. And that's why I moved back to the home that I'm in right now about 10 years ago. And everything I've done since has kind of been a part-time gig. But I really I figured out about halfway through my fire service career, I really wasn't a firefighter at all. I was really more of a safety person who happened to be in the fire service. So since then, I've been a full-time safety guy. I started my consulting practice, again, about 10 years ago, basically as a hobby, and it's still probably more so a hobby, but ID2 Solutions is my opportunity to help people go into their small or large organizations and help them be safer. And here's where race kind of comes into it too. And we can kind of get into this in a little bit more detail, but Black people don't seem to talk about safety that much other than we're talking about crime. So in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's, I got to breathe, I need water, and I need food. And the next step up is safety. And some of our people never get past that, because we can barely do the first one. We can barely keep food and water and, and stable housing and all that kind. So we never really get to safety. We definitely don't get to, esteem and, self-actualization, all the other kind of stuff. We don't ever get there because of the environment that we live in. And so another part of that whole safety conversation is safety is not just about physical, chemical, biological, and ergonomic safety either. Those are the ones that get talked about. It's also about, and the one we're going to talk more about here is psychosocial safety. That's because if you can get that one, all the others will actually become a lot easier. A lot easier.
But is it easier because maybe they've developed a thick skin, or maybe they've developed some tools to kind of deal with some of the other stuff?
Psychosocial safety is basically about how people feel. It's just that simple.
Right.
And you can have all the programs in the world. If I don't feel safe, I'm not safe. Period.
Okay.
Full stop right there. I can have a fire station on every corner. I can have cops in every corner. People don't feel safe. They're not. They're not. It is about, even in government, the idea is all these programs, they don't work unless people feel it. Because I don't know what so there's a quote, I believe it's from The Speed of Trust, if I'm not mistaken. I enjoy a couple of those Covey books, but he says in the book that we evaluate ourselves based on our intent. We evaluate other people based on what they do. And I add this part, and then we make up what their intent was, because we don't really know, but we tell ourselves a story about what their intent was. So if I don't feel safe, it doesn't matter what you did. I just don't feel safe.
Okay. So let's jump into the topic at hand, workplace bullying. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I mean, I wasn't always 6'4". I sprouted to that. I mean, I've been the same height since I was 14 years old. But when I think it was around 8 or 9. I want to say around 9ish. There was a kid who was bullying me at the time, and he was small. He was shorter than I was. Fair skinned guy, had long wavy hair. He was black, but he was real, fair complected, long wavy hair, and he was just a bully because he had people with him that made him a bully. That made him wanted to do that, I guess. And my father got, I came home, I was frustrated, I was tired. My father then, and this was back in the 70s, he was like, look, I'm tired of hearing about it. I don't want to hear about it anymore. Go out and deal with it. And when you deal with it, let me know that you've dealt with it. So I went out, dealt with it, and ended up fighting the guy. And at the time, I mean, that was just the way you confronted a bully. You dealt with it, and that was the instructions your parents, my father gave me. And I didn't have any more trouble out of him, so much so that we became friends, if you will, at that age. He's my friend now. But in the workplace, it's not so easy to confront. It's not so easy to identify. It's not so easy to say, I'm going to go and do it, because there might be things around it. So let's talk about, how would you describe workplace bullying? Because sometimes people, and you and I talked about this a little bit before we came on, is sometimes people don't know that they're bullied, or they just think it's the culture of the organization.
And it is.
So that's just how it is, but they don't know that they're being bullied. So what is it, and how do we identify it?
So one of the things that I also want to mention, that I'm an affiliate of a group called of an organization called the Workplace Bullying Institute.
Okay.
So Dr. Gary Namey, he and his wife Ruth created this institute, getting close to 30 years ago. In both cases, because they had been bullied. So I have not met anyone who has been bullied at some point in their life. It is a part of humanness. It is. But it's the part of humanness that comes from our kind of animal instincts. That's how animals solve stuff. They kind of rear up, and their feathers go back, but as humans, so we are supposedly more evolved than animals. So the going out there and fighting that's our animal instinct. Let's go out there and beat each other up. Well, but that also plays into as a society, our belief that we resolve our conflict by violence. Okay. And it does work. It actually does work. Yeah. It's not effective long term, because if you get me, then I'm going to get you. Then we end up in it's not for humans. It's not really effective. So the definition of bullying that I use is the one that's used at the Institute. It's repeated health harming behavior that's abusive in nature. That's kind of paraphrasing. So it's the repeated health harming abusive behavior by the perpetrator, and it's based on the perception of the target. Okay. And there are other, much longer, much more complex, but that's it. And it is that repeated nature is important, because I want to talk a little bit about this spectrum of what I call a spectrum of violence. Mm-hmm. And bullying is kind of in the middle, Okay. Yeah. And
if I can interrupt you, is bullying in the middle because the person who's doing the bullying might have done some type of an assessment based on the other person, such that once the assessment is over, now the bullying is the action that they're taking?
Oh, no.
That was kind of how I heard it. So I wanted to kind of clarify that. So
bullying is often a learned behavior. Right. It's a learned behavior. You watch, because nobody takes you out and says, here's how I'm going to bully somebody. You watch others, how they interact and how they resolve conflict. So in your case, your parent told you that's what you were supposed to do, so that's what you did. Right. That kid who bullied you, that's what they saw in other people. That's how they amassed power. That's because we didn't give him, I think it was any other tools. And the same thing in the workplace. If you don't give people other tools, they're going to use that one. And that's the things that they've seen. And the reason I talk about on a spectrum is it actually starts with just not being kind to each other.
Okay.
Because there's nothing kind about being a bully. I'm not kind about it. It doesn't feel good. I know I haven't liked it when it happened to me. And I don't think other people liked it when I did it to them, because the truth of the matter is I did it to people as well until I figured out what was going on. I was just doing what everybody else did. And it wasn't working out. And as I got to understand it more, I go like, oh man, oh boy, I got to stop doing that. So sometimes it takes a realization even on our part that, because again, mammals tend to imitate behavior of other mammals. That's how we learn this stuff. Yeah.
So what does that look like? So what are some examples of workplace bullying?
So it really is dependent on the perpetrator and the target. So here's an example. An example of bullying is, and I should mention, it is almost impossible to bully someone unless you have power over them. So power by size, power by seniority or education or something that you perceive and they agree. They believe that you have power. A tall person can bully a shorter person just because of their size. But generally in the workplace, it's about positional power. It's about, I'm the supervisor, the lead, the one who can do your performance appraisal, or the one who can influence your pay, and I'm going to treat you some kind of way. Again, I can't recall the statistics off the top of my head, but it's probably somewhere 60 to 80% of all bullies are supervisors. It's a really high number,
Wow.
So again, I'm in a position of power, and I use that power repeatedly in abusive ways to make you feel bad. Because so there are some bullies who are swift enough to know, if I hit you, I'm going to get fired. If I do something that leaves a physical scar, I'm going to get fired. If I leave an emotional scar, it'll be your word versus mine. And that's how I talk about. So I'm doing some research right now to complete my PhD in occupational health and safety. And the focus of my research is psychosocial safety hazards. There's not a lot of research out there on it, but there is some. And again, it is the silent way that I criticize your work. I keep you out of meetings. I say little things. You know what they say about Carson? Carson is this and Carson is that. And it is my perception. So again, it's hard to argue whether or not it's true, but it's not helpful. It's not effective. What's the point of sharing this story? Anything that we do to tear people down, to slow them down, to control them, that repeated behavior, especially when the target says, hey, hold up. So until the target says something, an argument could be made that the bully may not know what they're doing. It is the culture. It is the culture, because the culture.
So it's incumbent upon the person being bullied to let the person know that they're being bullied? No.
That is one of the ways. The other way, the most effective way, is for the organization to determine that. For the organization to have a policy that says, this is what bullying is here, and if you do this, here's the consequences. But since most people don't do that, you end up with a person having to defend themselves. Now, here's the challenge. The challenge is, unless the organization backs you up, bullying can actually become mobbing. So bullying is one person. It's kind of a one-to-one relationship where I'm picking on somebody because I'm in a position of authority. But what happens is, because the organization handles it poorly, it becomes mobbing, because then it's the bully, it's the HR director, it's the finance people, it's the whole organization. What are you telling on us for? It's okay, blah. Why are you saying that? You're gonna show up on our statistics. You're gonna file a complaint against us. So the entire system turns against you, with the goal of basically running you off.
So is there a difference between bullying and harassment?
Yes, there is. Okay,
and what are the differences? What is the difference between the two? Because someone might be harassed but not being bullied, or is there a progression from one to the other?
There's a progression. The progression is incivility. Don't treat people with kindness. Incivility, if allowed, can create an environment where people will haze other people. Hazing it's intentional. Incivility might not be intentional. Hazing is on purpose. I'm trying to embarrass you. I'm trying to make you look bad. That's my intent, but I don't do it ongoing. I only do it once or twice, and I generally do it because you're new, because it's an initiation thing. But after a while, I stop. That's hazing, and that happens in a lot of our higher education institutions, colleges, universities, and what have you. And a lot of them have gotten in trouble for that. Bullying is repeated hazing, basically. You keep doing it over and over and over and over and over again. And over means multiple times based on the target. But it becomes illegal when the target of the bullying is being bullied because they are engaged in protected class activity or they're protected class themselves, according to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. That's what makes it illegal. So bullying is not technically illegal. Harassment is. Because harassment is based on a characteristic. And then harassment can in turn turn into violence. And that is also illegal. You can be arrested for assault and battery. There are workplace violence kinds of requirements in OSHA. So that's why I say it's kind of in the middle. Bullying is the last thing you can do before it becomes illegal, which is the reason why people hang out there.
So, and I remember, and I don't know if it was, I want to say it was maybe 10 years ago, there was a lot of emphasis on harassment policies. Like everybody had to make sure they had a harassment policy in place. There was all kind of harassment training. And I'm not sure if it was so much that training had to be put in place so much because of the sexual harassment nature.
Yes.
I can't remember the culture, but harassment became a big thing.
Yes.
And you all of a sudden there were harassment seminars, harassment experts, and so forth. And so on.
One of the key situations that brought that out was the Anita Hill Clarence Thomas exchange.
Right.
Because so when people see that kind of stuff and they see it visibly, then people start, whoa, we better get our act together. And so that was fashionable at the time. It became a part of the lexicon of organizations across the country. Now everybody's got a sexual harassment policy, and there's a law against it as well. I mean, there are laws against discriminating in sexual fashions. So again, there's a law against it, which requires people to do it. And frankly, it's now fashionable to talk about Black Lives Matter and all that kind of stuff and have diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. That's fashionable. Not everybody believes it. Because again, what I find is that you find organizations that, as long as it's not illegal, they don't care. Which is where bullying lives. That's where it lives. Okay. It's not illegal.
So I was looking up some of the terminologies with respect to bullying, and one of them that I found interesting was, like, this is normal behavior, or we see no evil. Like, we don't see anything. This is just you being insensitive. Oh, yeah. This is you not, this is you trying to be politically correct, or you're trying to get me canceled. This is the way this is the way I talk to everybody. This is the way I act towards everyone.
In the United States. That's another thing. That's another key, that it's normal in the United States. Because if we were in Canada or New Zealand or the UK or Australia or a number of other countries around the world, it'd be illegal. And it's just not illegal here. It's not illegal here because we still have the vestige of the slave economy still exists. It still exists. And a lot of employers treat their employees like trash because they can get away with it. And they know, again, if I don't leave a scar, it'll be my word versus yours, and the system's not going to support me because, again, there's no law that says I can't do it. And if I go to try to complain about it, I'm just going to be and particularly for men bring it up, oh, you're just being weak. And, it's more of that nonsensical stuff. It is a psychosocial safety hazard that has an effect on not only the psychological health, but eventually it will have an effect on the physical health of anybody, because the stress associated with being bullied, people end up, you can't sleep, you lost your hair, you got high blood pressure, ulcers, so on and so. And again, these physical ailments are when people start suicide. The number one cause of death to police officers and firefighters right now? suicide.
Suicide.
It's been that way for a number of years. That it used to be cancer in the fire service, used to be cancer. Now it's suicide.
Wow. So we have a few more minutes, and I know people wonder, like, when are they going to get to some solutions? We're going to discuss solutions, but we're not tonight. I just want to let you know that this is just part A of a two-part conversation that we want to bring you. So we are going to talk about solutions, but I want to talk a little bit. The former president and his wife. Well, his wife in particular, she had this Be Best, initiative, and basically it was to, we weren't supposed to bully people online, and while her husband was probably the number one perpetrator of that in the United States, using his power, and we saw what he used his power to, to influence others to bully.
Yes.
Bully individuals who worked at the state capitol. Talk about it a little bit, workplace bullying, because a lot of people are at home. We're communicating through computers and cell phones and Zooms and Teams meetings. So talk a little bit about that and how that's impactful, because I'm not there in the office. I mean, I'm at home. They can't physically hurt me, but the psychological damage, as you mentioned, is still.
That's right. So there are a number of ways. One of the ways, so you can be unintentionally bullying folks because you just don't understand them, because you're too different, and that happens often when there's a difference in terms of gender, ethnicity, race, that you're hurting people because Black people don't like that, white people don't like that, disabled people don't enjoy that kind of conversation, so on and so forth, because you don't understand. So it really literally could be unintentional. It also could be kind of quid pro quo, in your face type stuff. And again, that's the one that happens less often because people, even the bullies, don't have the courage to do it. And then the one that is probably more pervasive these days is cyber bullying, because the cancel culture or whatever, even that you alluded to earlier, you can do some very vicious things on Facebook and Instagram and through email and on Zoom. You can, and again, it is about the perception of the target. It is about, we send you to the room and won't let you come back, or we start the meeting, we don't give you the link, or the words that we say, the fact that we're all on a Zoom link and we mute everybody except the people we want to. There's all kinds of ways of digging at people, and what makes it worse is when the person says that it's uncomfortable, it doesn't work for them, and then you do it more. That's when you really cross the threshold. Because I told you last time that didn't work for me. That's why it's so important. And again, I understand that people are sometimes they've almost been conditioned to be afraid, so they won't speak up. But if you don't speak up, it's going to be very difficult to do anything about it later, because they say, I don't know. So people got to get the courage. And that's why I try to encourage people is get the courage, or have somebody say it for them or help them to call it out. Because if you call it out the first time, the last time I was in a situation like this, I called out the first time the person did it. First time. I'll give you a second time. First time. Right.
And how did that, how were you perceived, or how did you feel you were perceived when you called it out?
I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care. It's about me. I'm the target. That doesn't work for me. And so I try to do it respectfully. Addressing me in that way doesn't work. That's all. It doesn't work. If you want to get the best out of me, I need you to do it this way. I want to be clear with you, because when you do it the next time, I'm going to be a little bit ramped up.
Right. One thing I want to touch on, and then we'll close out, is the whole victimization. You talk about being a whistleblower. You talked about talking about it, telling other people. Sometimes people don't want to be like,
of course,
I don't want to be the one. Right. I don't want to be the one that brings so and so down, or what if they don't believe me, or I don't have enough confidence to do this. This person has too much power. I'm at home with my kids, so my career is important. I'm a single mom with kids, and
I understand all that. Yeah,
all of that. So talk about the victimization of a whistleblower.
Yeah. So some of that is about you. It is about putting yourself in a situation where you could be victimized. I decided 10 years ago, because of the experience I had, to get myself out of it, but it took years to do it. So I didn't have to be victimized. But
Right.
people have to make those decisions on their own. And people have to decide, how important is this thing to be, so if it's so important that the money's so important and you feeling okay, then that's not bullying for you, because you take the abuse, but not all of us will,
Right.
and no one can make you feel inferior without your permission. Eleanor Roosevelt.
Yeah.
So you got to give people permission to do it, and you ought to have permission to continue, and then you standing by and watching it happen to someone else, again, being a bystander, that's a part of the problem. That's why it works. Because if people know that I'm going to stand up, you don't get to bully me or other people. I'm going to say something. I may end up leaving that group or that organization or whatever, but it's important enough to me to stand up for it. So and
I know that we talked about, workplace bullying, but it appears, and I'm pretty sure it does, that a lot of these principles, a lot of these things that we talked about can work outside of a workplace.
Absolutely.
We can work with friendships, relationships.
Absolutely.
Marriages, whatever.
That's right.
It's all universal when we come to that. We're at the close of this show. Thank you so much. I know those of you that are watching, you're like, we can't end here, but we have to end here tonight. Dave and I are going to hop on Instagram. If you want to join us, join me at my handle is Michael Carson Jr. on Instagram. We're just going to, again, go over I took some notes. We're going to go over some of the things we talked about here tonight, but tune in next week. David is going to provide some solutions. We're going to talk about some strategies, just some things that can help you if you're experiencing bullying, or if you know someone who's being bullied. We're going to talk about, at the bottom of the screen, you see his website where you can get in touch with him to get some information. He'll gladly share that information with you. If you need his consulting services, feel free to reach out to David. David, thank you so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. And it's just a lot of good information that we can take away from here tonight. And we can, tonight was more about getting an understanding about what we're dealing with. So like I said, next week, we'll talk about solutions. We'll talk about strategies so that you can either get yourself out of a situation or possibly provide some information to others. So have people tune in next week. We'll spend a couple minutes going over just a little bit about what we talked about tonight, but next week's show is really all about the strategies and the things that you need to be a better person in whatever the environment is, such that you won't be bullied, you won't be a bully yourself, and that you'll be able to recognize it. But if you're an employer, if you own a business and you want some strategies for your business, please feel free to reach out to David to get his advice. He's the expert here. And so you'll get better clarity as to what's going on. So we're going to show a quick outro video, if you will, with some information about Imagebuildrs. And again, thank you so much tonight, David. Appreciate you, man. Until next week, continued blessings to everyone that tuned in. Thank you.